Hello everyone! Whoa, that was enthusiastic. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a long time, again, but after all, I'm back. I'm not dead. Hope you haven't forgotten about me. And in today's video, I'll be talking about German folk traditions happening in summer. But before I do, I have an exciting announcement. Oh god. That's such a weird fucking YouTuber thing to say. I have an exciting announcement, you guys. But I really do have an exciting announcement. Well, at least it's exciting to me, and if you're into German folk magic, which, I mean, you're watching this, so you probably are, this might also be exciting to you, I have started my Patreon, finally. After months of debating and checking with what the tax situation is going to be, I finally feel confident enough to put my content out there and make a financial commitment to it. So if you think my content is way too sporadic, you can financially oblige me to produce content on time. And the link to that is in the description. On Patreon, I'll be sharing extensive and fully academically sourced blog posts on different topics in German folk magic. Depending on the tier you subscribe to, you'll be getting multiple blog posts per month, in addition to early access to my videos, special shoutouts to my videos, also Patreon exclusive videos, and more. And if you find the stuff I tell you about German summer traditions interesting in this video, you'll also be able to find a blog post on my Patreon about German traditions around Pfingsten, which is a holiday taking place usually around the end of May, which I talked about extensively in a post, so check that out if you want. And with that cringy YouTuber shit out of the way, let's get into the actual content of this video. So firstly, we have to talk about seasons within German folk magic. Folk magic a lot of the time was driven by people who very much dependent on the cycle of the seasons and observing nature. People needed to know when to sow seeds, when was the right time to harvest, when was the time to drive the cattle to the summer pastures, when was the sea calm, when were the storms in the mountains not so bad, and stuff like that. And with that, eventually stuff like Bauernregeln, farmers' rules, became known. Usually these come in forms of small little rhymes which have a divinatory aspect to them. One example of this would be the phrase Mai kühl und nass füllt des Bauern Scheunen und Fass, which reads the omen that if May is unseasonably cool and wet, then that year's harvest would be plentiful. Oftentimes, signs from nature were also taken, like the arrival of St. John's beetles around the solstice, and if they were to arrive prematurely, then this would be a good sign, and if they were to arrive later in the year, then that would mean something bad for the incoming harvest season. In many German rural beliefs, the three main months of summer are May, June, and July, because similar farming activity takes place during these 3 months. And they would represent sort of the calm before the storm, before the work on the farms, in the fields, would be most intense in early autumn. So according to this, the traditions within the first month of summer, in May, still somewhat relate to the banishing of winter, and we can see these traditions also extending even into June a lot of the times. If we don't get any freakishly hot weather here in Germany, the time where trees usually start to become green again, like overwhelmingly green again, and the forests all get their leaves back, is during early to mid-May. And this transition within nature has been marked by processions similar to the Greenman processions in the UK. Basically, the concept is that you take a guy, you wrap him up into the fresh greens which have grown, and then you send him down the street with a big parade. Which sounds kind of fun if you ask me. This practice has largely died out in my region, but we used to have stuff like this. On the morning of Pentecost, young boys would go from house to house, and they would check on the other boys within those houses and see if they were still sleeping. And through that, they determined what boy slept in longest on that day. And that boy would be crowned the Langschläfer, the long sleeper. Basically our regional equivalent of the Green Man. So he would be all decked into fresh green birch leaves and then go from house to house with the other boys. And at the door he would do a little jig, sing something, and then they would get some stuff in return, such as small amounts of money, eggs, bacon, maybe even some berries if they had already grown, and if they were old enough, probably also copious amounts of alcohol. Since this is northwestern Germany and we don't really speak German here, at least we didn't used to, we spoke Low Saxon, aka Low German, these songs which the 𝔖𝔨𝔨𝔨𝔨 and his company would have sung are also in that language. And one such song went, Pinkste blome fule Socke hef so opstaan havi die nicht ladestaan. Which again is just to reiterate to not be lazy and get up early, because now the summer season is starting. Now you need to get up early. Now you have something to do. Now you need to be active. And this entire ritual in a way could be seen as the people of the village reactivating and re-energizing themselves to initiate themselves into the brighter half of the year. Similar rituals oftentimes take place a few weeks prior on the 1st of May or even on the last day of April. And the sentiment there is basically the same, re-energizing yourself, banishing the winter and welcoming in the summer season and the fresh greenery. This is also the time where you'll see a lot of maypoles being erected all around the countryside and even in some cities. And some traditional dances are done there by taking the ribbons and then running around the maypole and then knotting the ribbons around the maypole in a way. There are also some erotic and phallic sexual elements to this, very much in the vein of bringing fertility. On the day of this celebration in particular, people would also make schnapps out of woodruff, wild woodruff that they would just finding in the forest, since this is the season where it starts to grow. And with that, they would have also been very much intoxicated throughout these celebrations. I could imagine that this is also partly where we get the idea of mad witches flying around broomsticks, taking some form of magical ointments during this time. Because taking some herbal drink that changes your perception in a way and then having a bit celebration and dancing in a circle, that's kind of witchy if you ask me. Also, the 1st of May would mark the beginning of the strawberry and asparagus harvest, which after a cold, dark and long German winter is probably just the right thing to get your systems back going again. And this harvest time would last throughout the early months of summer and end on the summer solstice, where the last strawberries and pieces of asparagus would be ritualistically eaten. And it was said to be bad luck to not have eaten all of your strawberries and asparagus by that time. In addition, this is also truly where herb gathering would pick up, because you already needed to be thinking of the winter ahead, and you need to restock your medicine cabinet in a way. Also, on some auspicious days like Pentecost, like the summer solstice, or some saint days like the Feast of St. John, you could put some special herbs under your pillow and then sleep on it and dream of your future spouse. Each region has their own set of flowers or herbs which need to be gathered for this purpose, but I'll include one of these lists here. Another big important aspect of summer celebrations is fire, especially in the context of ritually purifying yourself from the winter season and driving out the last evil spirits. You probably have heard of people driving their cattle through 2 big open flames to purify them, or people jumping over a bonfire which has kind of burned down and isn't as high anymore to bring good luck and fortune for the coming year. Many times these fire needed to be ignited by 9 different sets of special wood, and the ashes of those fires also held ritualistic and spiritual significance. One tradition that I particularly like from these purification rituals is binding a belt of mugwort around you, and then while dancing around that flame, you would throw that belt off and push it into the flame, and that would ritualistically burn away all insults which had been thrown at you the previous year. In my opinion, it's one of the most fun ways to get rid of the evil eye. As summer was closing and the harvest was starting up and the work on the fields was getting more intense, the superstitions also center more around that domain. More emphasis on not being lazy, but also emphasis on not overexerting yourself. For example, if you were seen out in the fields working around midday, it was said to attract bad luck and the Roggenmumme, or as it was known in my region, the 𝔖𝔬𝔢𝔨𝔨𝔬𝔢𝔨, which in short is the spirit of the corn, especially the rye, which is said to take the form of a woman, sometimes a young woman, most often than not a ugly older woman. Sometimes she has iron teeth, sometimes she has iron nipples, usually comes with a big set of claws. And if you were out there on midday, working still, she would come for you and take you. Well, in some stories. In other stories, she just slits you open and eats your insides. This story was also used to keep children out of the rye fields during the harvest season. I've already talked about how in my region this time was where the last herbs were gathered in a special bundle called Würzbüsche, which was then strung up in the attic and used to deter thunderstorms. There are some interesting protection spells where you rip up the freshly baked bread, the first bread of the season, into 4 pieces and then hide those 4 pieces in the corner of your farmstead or your home, and then they are said to protect the farm for the coming year. I could talk for ages about this topic, but this is just supposed to be a rough and quick overview about celebrations during the summer in German folk magic. I might do more in-depth video about each celebration taking place during the season, but I'm not quite sure if I'll be able to have the time to make an extensive video on every one of these traditions, but I'll definitely try to do at least a more in-depth blog posts on them. But I'll try to at least do one in-depth blog post about each of them. And this is where we come to the Patreon shoutouts. Everyone that subscribes to the 𝔖𝔬𝔢𝔨𝔫𝔨𝔶𝔨𝔢𝔫 tier or higher gets a shoutout at the end of my videos. And yes, I did name my Patreon tiers after folkloric creatures from my region in northwestern Germany. I thought it was very topical for me. So shout out to Megan and Hexenheim, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Lottie